Welcome to Emerging with Jamal Robinson, a podcast where you hear from the diverse voices behind emerging technologies and gain useful insights for positive changes in your life and career. Beinvenido al podcast emergente. Our guest on today's show is Sandra Lopez. Here's some non-career related questions to help you understand Sandra the person before we get into Sandra the professional. Who do you admire the most and why?
I admire my parents the most. My father, because he taught me the importance of pursuing your passion at all cost, and my mother in terms of overall perseverance.
What are you most proud of?
Honestly, I'm most proud of myself and the ability to, I'm first generation Mexican American. My parents did not go to college, and so I had to learn a lot on my own in terms of how to get to high school, from high school to college, and entering corporate America.
Always love this question, but what is your favorite musician, artist, song, and/or album?
I have to tell you, my favorite musician at this present time is Bad Bunny. He is truly being himself, and he is being a big advocate for the ambiculturist community.
I love Bad Bunny. What is your most unusual skill or talent?
I would say my most unusual skill and or talent, or arguably my superpower, is I just like to build and create things. And so I tend to be very scrappy, gritty, and actively building of initiatives and or products.
What is your favorite TV show, movie, actor, and or actress?
My favorite TV show, actor or actress. There's so many to choose from for various different reasons. You got me on that one. I don't know.
We'll come back to it. Who's your favorite author, or what is your favorite book?
Joseph Campbell is my favorite author.
Very cool.
He helps me reflect on me and provides growth opportunities.
Love it. If you could meet anyone throughout history, dead or alive, who would that be?
Gandhi.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
We are all born to be kind. And how do we unteach ourselves the other aspects of not being kind so that we all live in a kind, happy, and peaceful world? And that's becoming ever so apparent in today's society.
Yeah, we could use more Gandhi in our life. What are 1 to 3 words that define you the best?
Passionate. Persevere. And self-love.
I love that. Last question. If you had to choose a last meal, what would that be?
If I had to choose a last meal, what that would be? It has to be one of my mom's home cooking meals. I'll take any of them.
Never go wrong with that answer. Sandra is an industry-recognized technology executive with extensive experience in delivering and marketing next-generation solutions. She's been a chief marketing officer at Fortune 500 enterprises like Adobe, Intel, Microsoft, and others. Sandra also cares deeply about creating diverse and inclusive cultures in the workforce. As a female Mexican-American in tech, Sandra has been the recipient of numerous recognitions, including Most Powerful Latina by the Association of Latino Professionals for America, Most Powerful Women in Tech by the National Diversity Council, Top 10 Latina Executives by LatinaStyle, Top 100 Most Influential Latinas by the Latino Leaders, and recognized as a game changer by Sports Business Journal. In addition, Sandra has also been featured on CNN, Cosmopolitan, Elle, Fast Company, NBC, South by Southwest, and more. We talk about her journey to becoming a marketing executive, her love of Bad Bunny's music, the importance of diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and the future of Hispanics in the enterprise. I know you're going to enjoy the discussion today. Now on to the show. Hey, thanks for coming to the show today. Please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Hi, I'm Sandra Lopez, a tech executive in Silicon Valley. Thank you, Jamal, for having me here. It's great to participate in the Emerging podcast today.
Thank you for coming. I felt like I prayed to the universe. I want to get this podcast to be super popular. And then you came my way, and with your accolades and backgrounds, I'm pretty sure this is going to send us to the stratosphere. So really excited to have you today. You had mentioned being a tech executive, and you've been a CMO across multiple companies focusing on marketing. At a high level, can you just help us understand what is the chief marketing officer role?
Yeah, so I often believe that chief marketing role is misunderstood. It's always associated with the creative, whether it's the PowerPoint, the 15-second video, and or social media, or for that matter, performance-based marketing. Really, the role of chief marketing officer should be redefined as chief growth officer. And we are there that understand the customer firsthand and are responsible for engaging, building relationships, and retaining our customer base, which ultimately means helping the company grow, drive revenue, and expand its marketplace.
Really well said. And you've been a CMO across multiple Fortune 50 companies. And I've noticed culturally at companies like Microsoft versus AWS versus Intel versus others, sometimes the CMO role takes the lead in growth to where BDs and product teams lean into them. Other times they act more supportive. So can you speak about the cultures across these various companies and how marketing shows up?
Yeah, I would say overall in the tech industry at large, let's take a 1,000-foot view. Marketing tends to take a secondary role because it's often said that it's the product that is the hero. And in reality, my point of view is it's every single function within the organization that becomes the hero. Whether it's marketing, whether it's head of sales, they're interdependent, as well as the chief product officer in terms of for marketers to provide a vocal input into the PRDs, which is the product requirement documents, in terms of what is necessary to help guide the organizations in terms of from the marketing standpoint. Where is the puck going, right? We as marketers really need to be, I often like to say that we should be culturists, whether it's for B2B or B2C, understanding where is your customer segment going. And so at a macro level, I will say that every single C-level and functional organizations has their role to play for the success of the overall company. And if you break it down in terms of, different types of companies, marketing could be leading in terms of setting the strategy long term and setting the pace, as well as making sure that they're hitting the short-term targets. And I think it's our responsibility, even if marketing is viewed as a kind of secondary function, very similar to a service organization like HR. It's a responsibility of the marketing organization to articulate our value so that when we are facing an economic climate, we're not the first ones that get the budget cuts, or we're not the first ones that actually get affected by the layoffs. And in the world of generative AI, there's so much conversations that are happening in terms of, is generative AI going to replace the role of marketing or the role of sales? And to that, I'd like to say is that it is our responsibilities as marketers. How do you use these tools so that we better engage, connect, and retain our overall customer base and lead the companies to growth in a more efficient way?
Yeah, generative AI, I think, is a really important area to focus on. And I know you're at the World Economic Forum focusing on augmented and virtual reality. So one of the questions I had is, as a marketer, to your point, you all are the face of the customers, but when you're facing emerging technologies that may or may not have many customers and the company's still trying to figure out what lands the best, how does marketing approach technologies like that versus tried and true things like databases or mainframes?
Yeah, I always like to say the world is always changing and it's always evolving, and new technology is entering into the marketplace. In some cases, in terms of tools for us to operationalize the marketing organization and or tools to help us engage with our customer base. Like social media was amazing because you can have those intimate relationships with your customers, and people have used Twitter as your customer service support. And now with the evolution of artificial intelligence, it is the responsibility of us marketers to test things. And I always like to say is you test things in sandboxes. How will this tool be used to either engage with your customer and or create a greater efficiencies? I like to say that currently, ChatGPT is this robot of mine that I'm outsourcing to help ideate and think about different things, whether it's helping plan a keynote or whether it's helping kind of create a script for a particular video. And so my point of view around these technologies, they're always going to impact what you do somehow, some way, whether it's from an operation, so back end, or from the front end in terms of engaging with your customers. And so you shouldn't have to be, from a C-level executive, you shouldn't be so codependent on the next generation to figure out how to use these tools. It is a responsibility of every leader, regardless of what age you are in, to understand how are these tools going to affect how I run the business, how I engage with my customers, and how I can leverage for a competitive advantage.
Okay. And not quite an emerging technology, but also probably had an impact. I'm always curious about like social media's impact on the marketing org. Now you have like almost instant feedback from customers. Your product can be like mimicked out there by other people pretty easily. And I'm just curious, with the pros and cons of social media, how have you seen that change marketing?
Yeah. I mean, social media, it helps us further reach our customers in a very meaningful way. It's a method in terms of having conversation and creative, what you said earlier in terms of real-time interaction. I remember I don't forget the Oreo moment that happened during a Super Bowl where the lights went out and how they put out a piece of content literally almost in real time. And so we have to think about, marketing in the past used to have long production cycles, and now we can have these real-time intimate conversations. And to your point, Jamal, like, we hear the good, bad, and the ugly. And that to me is like feedback, when it's constructive, and even the bad helps us learn about our customer base. And thus, we have to be, I always like to say, like, the marketing role has evolved in terms of we are content creators at all times. We're editorial, we're journalists. And we have to also think about the values that we are creating in terms of what we're putting out there and the role that our company needs to take. So when I talk about values, are you going to talk about, pro-life and pro-choice? Like, you have to make those hard calls in terms of, as marketers, you have a role working with your executives to determine, is this the place that your company is going to take a stance? And then we always hear from our customers, to your point, Jamal, like through social media, why is an XYZ company taking a stance? I've just been looking at Nike and their support of Dylan, who is a transgender individual, and the conversations that are happening in social media real time, and what Nike kind of came out and took a stand for in terms of who they are as a company. And so I would say social media not only gave us an opportunity to have a more intimate relationship with our customer in a one-to-one basis, but also it has created a platform that we have to expand beyond who we are as a company, but also talk about our values and what type of societal conversations do we want to get involved in.
This is an area I've seen like significantly change. It used to be marketing, marketing focused almost exclusively on the company, but now there is an expectation for companies to have a personality, to have a side. Has that been a challenge? Like, I'm pretty sure there's been benefits of now you can speak out and people can be more authentic and represent their views, but you may be at a company that has views different than yours, or now you're publicly having to defend maybe an executive's views that don't align with yours. So I'm curious how that's manifested.
No, I think from my point of view, it's fantastic. It really forces a company to think about who they are at the heart of not only what they're offering from a product or services, but who is the company? I mean, if you think about that, businesses are people businesses, right? The businesses run based on the individuals that are in service to the company. And we have to think about what do we want to stand for? What do we want to speak on? And at times, maybe we don't have to take a stance. It's okay to be neutral. And I also tell people that from my standpoint, as I look at corporations and the evolution, we've gone through many critical moments over the past couple of years, whether it was COVID or George Floyd or what's currently happening in terms of gun violence. All of that affects our employees. And so yes, there is, what do we want to say as a company? And then I would also say as leaders, knowing that every day an employee is bringing something to the table that maybe doesn't allow them to be 100%, and that's okay. Sometimes you're going to be able to say, like, I'll take your 50%, because I value as an employee, and we're all humans. And, a month later, or a couple of weeks later, they're going to show up 100%. So understanding that goes back to the basic fundamentals that a business is a people business. And we're evolving in terms of how we run businesses. We talked about earlier before we started the importance of EQ. In the past several years, it was all about your IQ. And now the great leaders are going to be the ones that have both IQ and EQ. Great companies are going to be evaluated based on their values. Talk about Gen Z. Gen Z is paying attention to the values in which a company stands for, and they are voting by their wallets. They are marching out for what they believe is right. The next generation, which is called Zalphas, after Gen Z, we anticipate is going to be further amplified around their values. So we, as marketers, need to understand the multi-generational segments that we're marketing to and the role that we need to take. And I do think this whole values-based conversation is something that when I started and had its aspiration to be a CMO, never thought that we would actually be in the center of it, talking about stances that we want to take and stances that we don't want to take.
Yeah. I think marketing, to your point, is the kind of face of the company to a lot of customers. So having some levels of ethics, being able to get out there in the forefront rather than wait till somebody says something and then have to counter makes a lot of sense. And yeah, when I first kind of got into work, I used to think of marketing as a back office role, but now I look at it as kind of the first and foremost, the primary interface with the customer. And then if I look at companies like Apple, I think their marketing arm is probably like the strongest arm of all, like engineering and all the products, which I also love. But marketing and the way that they got people to adopt technology and even like idolize technology, a lot of people my age and younger maybe don't realize like that was not a thing before. Technology was just tech, but Apple was one of the first people to get people to stand out in line and get addicted and go crazy. And for me, that was mostly marketing. It wasn't the specs, it wasn't engineering. Design was nice, but it was pretty much the marketing and how they were able to penetrate people and connect with them deeply.
Yeah, it was also, I would say, I would challenge you a little bit because I do think it was all the functions coming together. It was Steve Jobs' vision and really leading the way in terms of what could a computer look like, or the notion of the iPhone, and you didn't need like a pen or a stylus. You could actually, your thumb was the stylus. And so you needed the design. Then you needed to think about like a seamless interaction, right? Like what did that UX and UI look like? The packaging was flawless, and the little noise, a little bit of the air, and how they thought about that. Those were different functions within the organization. And then the marketing that helped kind of launch it to market was just as critical. And so to your earlier point, you talked about, when you first thought of marketing as the back office. And oftentimes in tech, like I said earlier, it is viewed that way, but it should not, because it is everything working together in unison that will actually drive the success of an organization. And so I don't like to say there's any one function that's the hero of a company. Every single function is the hero of the company. And together is what makes great businesses hum and grow and work.
Very high EQ answer. Typically when I speak to people in marketing is the one function. As soon as I get a product person, product's one function. So I always placate to my audience. But I am curious, as we talked about, to your point, there's a lot of different businesses that marketing would interface with to make sure that overall you can enable the customers, get the vision out and so forth. So when we look at a CMO org, somebody that's interested in being in marketing and having like various skill sets that they can bring to the table and contribute, what kind of personas exist within some of the orgs you've led?
I would say all personas exist. I'm a very big believer of diversity of thought, diversity of experiences. You don't have to have a marketing pedigree to be part of marketing. But what I would say is that you have to have a thirst for curiosity, a thirst to learn, whether B2B or B2C. the appetite to walk in the shoes of your customers. And so if you're curious enough to, I always like to think that I'm a psychologist and sociologist in terms of psychologist is a true understanding of the customer, how they live every single day, and have empathy for that customer, whether it's B2B or B2C. And sociology in terms of the context in which the customer is living in, all the other things that you need to take into consideration. And so if you come from an engineering background and you love to analyze, being able to look at all our data, whether the data that we have about our customer in our database and our continents and lakes of data, and what's happening at the macro conditions, I will welcome you to the marketing organization. The power of creativity, there's so much noise in figuring out how do you break through? And then you have so many channels. You have your website, you have videos, you have your YouTube, you have your TikToks, and you have your snaps, and they're all different and they're used differently. And so from a creative standpoint is understanding each platform and how your customers engage and the best method to deliver content. This is why I was saying we're content, we are a journalist, we are editorial. And so the reality is when I look at the pedigree and I look at the organization as a whole is, do I have the team members that want to work as a team, be best at their trade, and go win multiple Super Bowls? And that takes a lot of training, a lot of conditioning, and always the mindset that we're always learning, right? As marketers, I can't say that a marketer today has crafted their trade when you have technologies like AI coming in, which is going to transform how we do marketing. And so I go back to the basic principle is, do you embrace curiosity? Do you embrace the growth mindset? And first and then last, a value that I always look for and hire for is kindness and respect of your colleagues. You don't always have to agree with their points of view, but respect is, it's not an option, it's a mandatory.
Great answer. I've worked with a number of marketing organizations, and some people just have traditional degrees. And then I've worked with other marketing organizations. To your point, they have data scientists, they're doing churn prediction, they're running machine learning algorithms in the background, and it's just a full range. So if you're thinking of what I'll call one of the more advanced orgs, it sounds like that you ran that had a lot of different personas and also has high levels of EQ. Are there any things you'd recommend for people to go out and get, whether that be a certification or specific degrees, or look for certain types of experience when they're going out to work that makes them more applicable to organizations you run?
I would say a couple points of view. One, know that the marketing organization is always growing and learning and evolving. So seek to understand what you're really passionate about. Are you super into creative? Are you super into data analytics? Are you into merging technology? So, in teams that I would have the incubation team. My incubation team right now would be let's learn everything about AI so that we can kind of redefine what the marketing organization could possibly look like. So my point would be, I can't tell anyone specific, but lean into what you're really good at. Go learn that. And always know that change is constantly happening, and change with it so that you can remain relevant. It would be my advice.
Great advice. One question, you had mentioned marketing pedigree, and I noticed, at least at the company I worked at, we had a marketing office. I walked in, the office was really nice. They had a music studio. Everybody was really dressed up. And I've noticed this trend in marketing departments. People are super stylish, especially in tech, where everyone's wearing hoodies. Is that a thing? Even on your profile, it looks like you have some Christian Louboutins on your banner, or Mark Weitzman, or whatever the $1 million pumps are. But is that a marketing thing? When you come into the interview, you have to be super stylish and...
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. You have to come in, be who you are, show that you're really curious about the customer. That's it. You can wear the hoodie, you can wear the shorts, you can wear, the hot thing right now is Crocs with socks. Go for it. It's all good. I would just tell people, know the company that you're interviewing with They have maybe a particular style. So not to say change your wardrobe for them, but make the appropriate adjustments. And when it comes to me in terms of hiring individuals, you can wear what's appropriate for the job and what's represents you.
Great answer. Let's maybe now transition to some of the things that have kind of gotten you to this position in life. So thinking about your career, where have sponsors or role models or mentors played a part in your success?
Yeah, I love this question. I often like to tell people that how I got to where I am was, 30% is the work that you do in your intellect and your ability to deliver outcomes and business impact. The other 30%, honestly, was just luck, right place at the right time. And it just happened to be. And the other 40% is your network. And your network is all encompassing. It is those that mentor you. It is the sponsors that are going to advocate for you. And it is people in your business community that may open the doors so that you can get a business deal done. And so when I advise people is like, we are so like heads down, getting the job done. Sometimes we need to take a step back and build out that network. Mentors come in. I always like to say, like, mentors advise, sponsors advocate. We need advice in so many different things. And so like, I'm trying to learn more about the venture community. I need a mentor. And so, finding a mentor that's going to guide me and help me learn the trade is really important. There's mentors that help you. I had a child, and when you come back to work, what does life look like as a working parent? I use mentors for that. And then sponsors are the ones that are going to advocate for you. So whether you're trying to get a promotion within that particular company or organization that you're in, they're going to be the ones that will say, hey, you got to really think about Jamal. Here's what he's accomplished. He's ready for the next role. He should be put up for promotion. Or if you're trying to pivot your career and going from an engineering role to maybe a marketing role, who is that advocate that's going to pick up the phone and call me and say, Sally really deserves that opportunity, and here's why. She's shown that she can be, the growth mindset, everything that you look for in terms of people that you like to employ for the marketing organization. So when you look at, tools that you can use in your tool set, I would say your network is going to be very important. I tell people, like, that is one of my greatest wealth in terms of the network that I have built, curate, and cherish. And many, many, many people have helped me along the way. And to that, I like to tell everybody that has been involved in my journey, thank you so much.
Yes. My non-marketing mentor and I have this conclusion that essentially after LinkedIn put images on essentially your resume or your profile, now everybody needs to essentially market themselves and become their own social media influencers and so forth. So I'm curious now that I have a marketing executive to ask this question too, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because you had just mentioned the importance of your network, and now LinkedIn kind of is this primary area where people go to network for professionally. And I see some people that have amazing networks and it looks like their career opportunities are directly correlated. Then I see other people that don't have networks, although they have the skills, but they don't know how to promote themselves. So while they still have okay opportunities, it's just not like maximized. So really curious on your thoughts on that.
I would say do what's right for who you are. I know individuals that are CEOs or executives at companies that have no LinkedIn presence, and you try to Google them and they're completely invisible, and yet they're successful. And then there's the opposite of individuals that have a, pretty standout LinkedIn presence, are very vocal about things that they care about, whether it's business, diversity, inclusion, and or other things that represent who they are, and it works for them. And so I'll just go back to some basic fundamentals is networks matter, and how you bring them to bear is up to you. Personal branding and who you are and what you stand for and your contributions to the business also matter, because otherwise, if you're not creating your own narrative, somebody else is creating your own narrative. And so how do you manage that narrative? It could be on social media, and it doesn't have to be on social media either. It could be, stealth through your various network. And you can say, Johnny is really good at doing, business development deals. And so you should hire him for XYZ. And he has no social media presence. But what he did do is build an extremely, wide network that will advocate for him and sponsor him for opportunities that are on the horizon.
Yeah, that's very wise advice. I forgot who said it, but somebody had mentioned about having like 10,000 followers versus 10. And they said you can have the 10,000 if my 10 is like Oprah, Bill Gates, and people that can go out there and sponsor me and advocate. So quality over
Absolutely.
quantity.
I 100% agree with you. 100% agree with you.
Okay. I'm going to apologize in advance because I need to ask you a lot of questions about Latinx and Hispanic community. And I'm not saying that you should be the representative of an entire community, but this will be to educate myself and the listeners.
Yep.
So maybe just to set the tone, I have a few stats here, just 2 high-level stats. I think that sets the tone. One comes from the Brookings Institute, a Washington, D.C. nonprofit research firm that focuses on domestic and global policies. And they've stated that the presence of Blacks and Hispanics in computer and math jobs remains starkly inadequate at the national level in the U.S. Blacks make up 11.9% of all workers, but only 7.9% of the computer and math roles. And then the gap is even larger for Hispanics, who make up 16.7% of all workers, but only 6.8% of the CM or computer and math workers. And then the other one comes from MSNBC. This is roughly 6 or 5 months ago. Latina's progress in the U.S. is stalled. Actually, this was the title. Latina's progress in the U.S. is stalled. In fact, it's gotten worse. Latinas are paid 54 cents for every dollar paid to white non-Hispanic men. So I wanted to just kind of get into these topics. And then for people that don't know you, which is probably a small few, you're very well accomplished. And in 2022, you're recognized as one of the most powerful Latinas amongst all of your other accolades. So I was just curious at a high level, like what are some of the unique challenges being in the Latinx community in corporate America?
So let me just start with what I believe is the biggest challenge that we have as a community. We need to build a community. The Latino Hispanic, which may not be known to if you're not within the community, there is a lot of biases, meaning if you're not from Mexico, then we're not going to help you out. If you're from Guatemala, we all come from many different countries. But fundamentally, when you bring us all together, 1 + 1 = 3. And so I would say the first challenge is that for mi gente, the Latino, Latina, Hispanic, we debate about what to call ourselves. Let's just stop debating it and let's pull ourselves together and let's work together to make an impact within the business community. I think we should learn from the Black community. We have seen tremendous progress from the Black community in terms of, VC funding, landing C-suites, BOD, and rightly so and rightly deserved from the Black community. And on the Latino community, we represent the 5th largest economy in the world, in the U.S. I just saw a stat that for the Super Mario Brothers, the viewership, 41% came from Latino Hispanic, and yet we represent 20% of the population. Let's digest that. In the music business, we surpassed the $1 billion mark, and we're going to be the largest within the industry. In the tech industry, the Latinos are the first ones that buy devices. So first, the community, we need to come together and we need to challenge corporate America and the entire ecosystem to ensure that we have a seat at the table. And then corporate America, you can't ignore us. We are your future consumer. We represent 20%. We are the youngest. On average, we're 16 years old. The non-Hispanic is 61. So you have to think about what is your Latino strategy and the opportunity that you're leaving on the table. So it's 2-pronged. Latinos, we got to come together. That is a challenge. We got to help each other out. And then the business, you have to understand how important this segment is to the future and viability of your business. Take a look at the stats that are happening.
I appreciate that 16 versus 61 stat. Sounds like the future is going to be very Latin. 16 versus, 61 is kind of on its way out. So, and to your point on like learning from blacks, you and I both worked at Intel. Intel has like the Intel Black Leadership Council and then also the Intel Latin Leadership Council. One of the things that I appreciated about them, or Intel in general, is like these groups came together. And for me, it was interesting listening to the Intel Latino Leadership Council and a lot of the similarities, like the things would come from maybe a different angle, but essentially you'd be facing some of the same things where I could see other like black women being on the show, giving the same call out, like, hey, we have to come together. Don't worry about these like different factions. Like we're all trying to do the same thing. So let's not get caught up on nuances. So where can people go if they want to learn more about like the Latin culture and enablement and even learn, because I'm sure there's a lot that exists in the Latin history that's rich that we could all learn from that may not get surfaced to non-Latin markets.
Yeah, so I would say most large organizations have an employee resource group, like you said earlier, of Latin Hispanic resource group. Reach out to a fellow colleague within your company to learn more. Two, there is a lot of us on the LinkedIn community that are highlighting what is transpiring within the Latino community. I mean, I started off with my favorite musician is Bad Bunny. No, there has not been a history in times where you had a Spanish headline. It was in Spanish, so it was Bad Bunny and had titles in Spanish. You're seeing a lot more content that's happening. You saw that in Saturday Night Live recently, with both Spanish and English. So they were speaking in both Spanish and English and no subtitles necessary. So my point of view is there's a lot of external resources and happy to help and provide guidance, but also start with your company. Employee resources groups are there so that it brings the community together, but also we're happy to provide a point of view and advice. And, I go back to, for those that are listening, take a look at what's happening at your C-suite and your board of directors and your C-1. Is your company have a representation of the businesses that they're serving? And if not, I think you have the responsibility to have those conversations with your senior leadership, should you want to live in an inclusive world. So lots of resources available to you. It's on LinkedIn, it's on Google, the data's there. We talk about this even in the Black community and the women leadership community. The data's all there. Now the question is, it's time to take action.
Yeah. And maybe one other resource is kind of your local community. I live in Houston, so I have probably more benefit than others. I want to say Houston is maybe 50% Hispanic, and then close by cities like San Antonio, 70%. But most cities will have some kind of Latinx Hispanic representation. Volunteering, getting engaged, just having like intimate conversations with people, I think can translate well to corporate America.
100%. 100%. I agree with you.
Okay. Maybe 3 questions on this topic, or one question in 3 different ways. So thinking of people that are sold on, hey, I want to help, and then they maybe don't have the data, but they're like looking for advice and they're listening to this podcast. How do we help those that are in corporate America that are Latinx to advance? And then how do we help those that maybe are more on the entrepreneurial side, so they're not necessarily looking to work for someone? You had kind of mentioned VCs earlier. And then the last area is like for people that are working in tech companies, but they're not the North American based like tech companies. They're like based out of Latin America, and these countries want to stay in Latin America to grow their economy versus coming to America. Like, how do we help those 3 cohorts?
God, there's, I think it's just very simple. I'll keep it super simple. Look at your business and ask, what are we doing to address the cohorts? What are we doing to support the Latinos that are in our company and we're not seeing them advance in leadership roles? What are we doing to best serve the Latino community in the United States? And then how are we investing in companies in Latin America? So people that are listening to your podcast, you're coming from many different industries, many different businesses. Sometimes it's just with a simple question is, where are they being represented? And are they? And if not, what's the best forum to kind of start to raise those conversations? And so there's employee forums all the time, just asking a basic question is like, I really like to see the population represented. I see that we have X, Y, and Z. Where's the Latino community or Hispanic community, or for that matter, the Asian community, right? So it's simply just asking the question. And you have to do it 7 times, 7 different ways so that people can start to hear and believe it. If you ask that question once and it goes away, then it's just like, okay, it went away. But you have to constantly have the drum beat. And so it's such an honor for me to kind of carry that drum beat. With that comes risk. Because is she too Latina? Is she too passionate? And I'm not too anything. I'm just making sure that our voices are being heard, because we are the 5th largest economy, and we know that we are essential to keeping your company and the economy growing. And so it's the right thing to do is to make sure that our voices are being heard.
Well said. And to your point on the one question, or asking the question one time, to me, if somebody asks it one time, they probably didn't care in the first place. But if you're truly trying to get to that answer, you'll ask 700, 7,000. You ask your local neighbor, you ask neighbors across the pond, wherever and whenever. You had mentioned being a woman, and you're obviously Latina also. So you're in these 2 protected classes, and you're speaking out, you're going out and presenting yourself and like moving the narrative forward. For me, that takes a lot of courage. Where would you say that you were able to gain that courage to feel comfortable to just go out and speak your truth, but then also enable other people?
When the door gets shut on you, or when you hear things that, hey, she's the AOC of tech, that just gives me more energy. It turns me on. And so when you get the no's, like, whoa, she's too vocal, or when your life is threatened because you talk about, diversity, inclusion, and, woman representation, Black and Latinos, and having them seat at the table, there is backlash that happens. And so I'm a very big believer that you're trying to silence us. And so no, you won't silence us. And that gives me the energy every single day to wake up and have our voices heard and represent the underrepresented, whether it's Latinos, Black, or women, because we matter.
I'm just thinking about people putting a death threat out on you when you seem very pleasant and you're just going out to do something to help other people. It's quite unfortunate, but it's kind of a blueprint that's been used to scare people, but you're still here. And a lot of times those people won't really take action. So I appreciate you pushing forward through all those things. With that said, it's not just that you're pushing forward. If I can just read through the accolades again, 2022 Most Powerful Latina, Moves has recognized you as a Power Woman of 2021, Top 100 Women in Technology, Adweek's 2021 Most Powerful Women in Sports, amongst a lot of other things. What do you foresee as like being next for you? Is it continuation of what you've done now, or is it something else that you're looking to do or aspire towards?
Continue to do the work that I do and leverage that as a platform to make sure that we have the underrepresented represented in the C-suite and board of directors, and as well as making sure that Latinos that have amazing companies that they're starting get some funds, because they're not being funded in the VC community. So if your name is not John, and if you don't come from Stanford or Harvard, the likelihood of a Latin-based startup getting funded is extremely, extremely, extremely low. And there is less than 1% the GP general partners in the venture fund community that are of Latino Hispanic descent, and that is wrong, because the VC community helps spend in our future technology that eventually informs society. So I will continue to push to make sure we have representation, while making sure that I am in service to a company and drive impact and drive growth, because you have to be able to show that you can drive businesses in a meaningful way, so that they can see that a Latina, a Latino, or a Black person or a woman can run successful businesses. And so we have to show as well as talk.
Okay. I love that answer. And I'll link to in some of the show notes the things that are on your profile, as you do like excellent job of advertising. As you were talking about the VCs and investors, I was thinking of your post on the Bloomberg Linnaeus, if I pronounce that right, 2022 100 Most Influential Latinos, that you basically shouted out and challenged the community and said, hey, you're looking for board of directors. Like, here's a list of good people that can be on a board. Very cool. So thinking about your next X amount of years, like how can people reach out to you and like either partner with you, and then what things should they reach out to if they want to work with you to continue this advancement of Latinx people?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
I'm a very big believer of like when I started my career, I wish I had a network, or I wish I had mentors and advisors. And so a way for me to give back is, and or help with the initiative is, people linked in with me and I most likely will answer and take a meeting, and you never know what will happen. We had this conversation about the power of the network. Sometimes you pick up that call that will change your life forever. So I remember taking a meeting unexpectedly with World Economic Forum, and a year and a half later I was in Davos. So you never know what that connection will do for your life and how it's going to change your life in a very positive, meaningful way. And so LinkedIn is the best place to reach me. And, if anybody that wants to participate in our journey of making sure that Latino voices are being heard, welcome you. And it's not just the Latinos reaching out to me. I'm a very big believer that it is an ampersand, it's Latinos and the non-Latinos and the non-Hispanic population, that together we will go drive meaningful change and represent the voices of Latino community in the United States.
Definitely. Really well said. I appreciate you coming on the show today. I know you're a very busy woman and you took time out to do my little small podcast, which is going to blow up to a big one after people hear you're on it.
It's not a little small podcast. It is a podcast that will inspire other people and also bring our community, the people that you interviewed, together. So thank you for taking the time to do this. You have also a full-time job. We need people like you to shine the light on the opportunities that exist. So thank you, Jamal.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and hope you'll come back for season 3. That wraps our conversation. Many thanks to Sandra for sharing her story and for the gems of knowledge she dropped during our discussion. I end each show with an inspirational quote. Today's quote is a Spanish proverb that reads, La vida es un eco. Si no te gusta lo que estás recibiendo, fíjate en lo que estás emitiendo. The English translation to that proverb is, life is an echo. If you don't like what you're getting, then pay attention to what you're putting out. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast. And leave a rating and review, as it really helps to amplify the message so others can discover this content and benefit from it. And we'd love more user-submitted quotes. I plan to read them at the end of each show. Instructions on how to submit those quotes are in the show notes. That's all for today's show. Thanks for listening, and until next time, peace